Before the sun fully rises, this capybara is already carrying a burden that no calm face can hide any longer. Its body stays quiet, but every twitch of the ears and neck reveals how badly those parasites are bothering it. Along the ear edges, the burden becomes unmistakable, with clusters of hard-bodied ticks packed into the thinnest skin. The neck folds suffer next, where warm, protected skin gives ticks an easy place to gather and stay hidden. Even the shoulders carry them, especially around old, scarred fur, where the capybara cannot easily see or reach. It tries the simplest relief it can find, pressing against reeds, but the worst hotspots remain frustratingly out of reach. For now, the capybara does what large herbivores often do best: endure the discomfort and wait for help. Then, at last, movement appears above the marsh, and the first small shapes arrive with perfect timing. The capybara hears them before we see them clearly, and its stillness suddenly looks less like defeat. The first yellow-headed caracara lands nearby, alert, precise, and already looking for the richest feeding spots. Instead of moving away, the capybara holds its ground, allowing the bird to come within easy reach. The bird does not peck at random. It studies the ears, neck folds, and shoulder line first. With one quick pull, the cleaning begins, and the capybara finally gets the kind of help it cannot give itself. Now the capybara adjusts almost imperceptibly, giving the bird better access to the shoulder and upper back. The burden is far from gone, but the first real relief has arrived, and the capybara knows it. By early morning, the first cleaner has settled in, but the capybara still carries far more ticks than one bird can handle. Another yellow-headed caracara circles lower, watching the first bird work before choosing a safe place to land beside the waiting capybara. The second bird approaches without panic, and the capybara remains motionless, accepting the growing cleaning team gathering carefully around its body. At the damaged left ear, the first caracara begins removing ticks one by one from the narrow outer edge of skin. Each quick pull clears a tiny patch, yet dense clusters still remain deeper around the ear base and surrounding warm skin folds. The capybara tilts its head just enough to expose the underside of the ear, giving the waiting bird a much better angle. That small movement matters, because the tight skin beneath the ear is one of the hardest places for the capybara to reach. A second caracara steps onto the shoulder, where dozens of ticks sit between coarse hairs and along several shallow skin folds. The birds work separately now, one at the ear and one across the shoulder, steadily reducing the burden without directly competing. From above, the pattern becomes clear. The heaviest clusters sit where fur, folds, and limited reach give these parasites natural protection. The shoulder cleaner follows the line of the old scar, picking carefully around the pale patch without disturbing the sensitive skin. Nearby, a third caracara lands on the mud and waits, watching for an open feeding spot rather than forcing its way in. The capybara lowers itself slightly, making its broad back easier to reach while keeping its head steady for the first bird. Now 3 birds are working around it, and the animal's posture begins to soften as the constant irritation slowly starts easing. Relief is still incomplete, but the cleaning team has found the worst hotspots, and the long wait is finally paying off. By late morning, 3 birds are working steadily, and the difference between clean skin and untouched parasite clusters is becoming impossible to miss. Deep inside the neck folds, dozens still remain packed close together, protected by warmth, coarse hair, and skin the capybara cannot groom. The caracara works quickly here, taking one tick after another, while the capybara keeps the fold open and remarkably still. For the first time, the neck muscles visibly soften, a small sign that the relentless irritation is finally beginning to ease. Farther back, the job is much larger, with dense pockets still hidden between the coarse hairs where the birds have barely started. 2 birds move along the back in short steps, stopping whenever they find another concentrated patch hidden beneath the heavy coat. Seen this close, progress happens one parasite at a time, each removal opening another small patch of skin beneath the tangled fur. The capybara shifts again, and the birds step aside for a moment before moving toward newly exposed folds along the opposite side. Turn reveals another hidden pocket, a sheltered fold where a fresh concentration of ticks has escaped every attempt at self-grooming. Working from opposite edges, the two birds thin the cluster quickly, each taking a separate section without interfering with the other. By midday, several clean paths cross the capybara's body, but darker parasite pockets still remain farther back and inside deeper folds. The left ear now looks different, with most of its exposed edge cleared, while only a few ticks remain near the protected base. Its eyes soften and breathing slows, while the birds continue behind it, turning an exhausting morning into something much closer to rest. But one stubborn pocket remains farther back, reminding us that relief has begun without meaning the capybara's burden is finished. Half the day has passed, and the capybara is visibly calmer, though the birds still have one difficult stretch of work ahead. The hardest patch remains on the rear back, where the birds finally gather around the last dense concentration of ticks. One caracara begins at the outer edge, removing exposed ticks first before pushing deeper into the protected fur. A second bird joins from the opposite side, turning one stubborn cluster into a steadily shrinking island of parasites. As space opens, a fourth caracara arrives, giving the group enough reach to work across several hotspots at once. The capybara lowers its chest and stretches its neck forward, exposing folds that had stayed hidden through the morning. That new position reveals another narrow line of ticks, and the nearest bird immediately begins working along it. The cleaning is fastest now, but it is still careful, with each bird taking individual parasites rather than pecking blindly. Around the old shoulder scar, only a few ticks remain, leaving pale, healed skin and coarse fur clearly visible again. The left ear gets a final inspection, and the last exposed ticks near its base are removed one by one. Across the upper back, dark clusters have broken apart into scattered individuals, each easier for the birds to find. The capybara no longer braces its neck against every touch, a quiet change that shows how much irritation has eased. For several minutes, the birds keep moving between the remaining pockets, checking folds they had already cleaned once before. Then the pace begins to slow, because the easiest parasites are gone, and only a few sheltered ticks remain. One by one, the birds pause more often, their search replacing the rapid feeding movements that dominated the midday cleaning. By early afternoon, the heaviest burden has been lifted, and the capybara finally looks more rested than uncomfortable. The frantic work is over now, and the birds spend more time inspecting than feeding as the capybara rests beside the water. A final check of the neck finds only isolated survivors, nothing like the crowded clusters that covered these folds hours earlier. The left ear is finally clear enough to flick freely again, without the dense line of ticks weighing along its edge. The birds now cross long stretches of clean fur without stopping, a simple sign that their richest feeding grounds are nearly gone. The first caracara finally leaves, lifting away without ceremony once the capybara offers little food worth staying for. A second bird follows soon after, and the capybara does not move to stop it or ask for more. The familiar bird with the broken wing feather makes one last pass over the shoulder, then stops searching altogether. With the feeding finished, the last main cleaner launches from the shoulder, ending a partnership that required no command or restraint. For the first time since morning, the capybara is alone again, but the stillness now feels comfortable instead of strained. After hours of standing and resting for the birds, it finally rises on its own and turns toward the water. It walks back toward the river, returning to the same water that framed the beginning of this long morning. Cool water reaches its chest, washing through the fur as the capybara settles into a familiar place of safety and rest. Its eye is soft, its ear is still, and the constant twitching that began this story has almost completely disappeared. A large animal could not solve this burden alone, but smaller lives found food in the very problem it needed removed. By sunset, the painful burden is lighter, and the capybara simply returns to being what it was before, an animal at rest.